Hello, I'm Reverend Ron Ferris, and this is the ministry of North Shore Unitarian Congregation in North Vancouver, British Columbia. We call it the Cutting Room Floor midweek ministry. Cutting Room Floor because it contains snippets of reflections that did not quite fit in the prior weeks or some prior weeks service, or some more embryonic ideas that aren't quite ready for prime time, so to speak. Prime time, in this case, being 10:30 a.m. on Sundays when we gather here on our YouTube channel. The first thing I'd like to invite you to do right now, look, the purpose of this midweek video live is to present you with an opportunity to stay grounded and to find some inspiration, perhaps to feel connected to the NSUC community as well as to your own spiritual path. And so here we are. It's my opportunity to indulge some half-baked ideas and your opportunity to take a moment out of your week and touch base with one another and the ministry that goes on at North Shore. So to start that off, I would just encourage you for a moment, even though you've got a screen on, to perhaps close your eyes for a second and take a breath. See what you can do to focus on where you are right now. Not the to-do list, not the distractions. And perhaps don't look at the screen for a moment, but focus on some element in your immediate environment. And let that be the anchor for a few breaths. Sometimes remembering to breathe can be very soothing. And so I hope that you can do a little self-soothing. I also have heard recently, been playing with the practice of not looking at the screen, particularly on Zoom meetings. We just have become such a screen-based people in this time of quarantine. I find that it really wigs my eyes out. So I've been playing with that. That's not what I want to talk to you about. What I want to talk to you about is, I remember back when I was in undergrad at Arizona State University, and I don't remember what class it was. It may have been Intro to Religious Studies or Comparative Religious Studies or a class on myth and meaning. I don't remember what it was. But anyway, they were laying out some basic fundamental terminology, and they wrote on the board theology, ontology, and epistemology. So theology is words about the divine, words about theo. Ology, study of, or words about theo, God. Ontology, ontos, is being, existence. So ontology is words about or study of existence. And those two both made a lot of sense to me. And, theology seemed quite obvious, although not necessarily applicable to what we were doing at public university. And even though I'm a minister, I still prefer the word ontology, because theology, comes with all the God baggage, and then you have to unpack it every single time you want to use it, and that gets a bit laborious. Ontology, you might have to explain what that means, but it's the study of being, which I feel like is a little bit a larger category, a more inclusive category than theology. I feel like ontology can include theology. Anyway, the point is, this third word, epistemology, the study of how we know. And I remember really not being able to wrap my mind around what that even meant, much less why it was important. I just thought we knew. We knew because we observed, or some expert that we trusted observed something and then came back to us and told us what it was. And so I sort of took epistemology for granted, so much so that it didn't even occur to me or trouble me in the least to pay attention to it, right, at that stage. And until quite recently, it never, every now and then, because every time I use the phrase ontology or theology for that matter, those three those three terms appear to me. That's like the class was. So whoever taught that class, I don't remember who you are, but I remember those three words, and they are inseparable to me. But as far as I was concerned, epistemology was the Holy Ghost of that Trinity, because I never saw it and never experienced it or figured out why it was all that important until now. And now it strikes me as the most important thing, the study of how we know. Some of the folks that I've been listening to, and I listened to several podcasts that feature folks like Daniel Schmachtenberger and Charles Eisenstein and a couple others that I can't remember now who, I can't credit who sort of presented this idea, but like information as a landscape or an ecology, and that it has become polluted, that people are intentionally and almost subconsciously putting out disinformation, and or information that is favorable to them, but not necessarily to their rivals, and therefore not a complete picture of the totality of that information. And so the whole ecological informational landscape, the whole informational ecology, how we know what we know is just polluted right now. And of course, social media has, it's always kind of been going on. Humans have always been, and even other creatures in nature, camouflage is kind of disinformation, right? So, but humans have long been deceiving one another to their own advantage, or misrepresenting the truth to their own advantage, telling part truths to their own advantage. But now the technology is so powerful and ubiquitous that it has completely, there is no center, it seems like, anymore. There is no central narrative that there can be deviations from to both check the central narrative, evolve the central narrative, and define, give boundaries to the central narrative, which the central narrative may or may not be correct, right? So you need these things to also be operative. But now the central narrative is completely fractured. The algorithmic, which I don't understand at all, but the algorithmic mechanism of social media gives us the information that it thinks will capture our attention best, right? So like an easy way to think about this is when we went to one of the first iterations of this is when CNN came about and went to 24-hour news, and then discovered, it seems and feels like it was during the first Gulf War, that war sells news, right? We always kind of knew that, but in the 24-hour news cycle, you needed some sort of hit all the time, right? So, and that has just been amplified now, right? And then you've got clearly intentionally bad actors out there muddling the water, some of whom are in the highest offices in certain countries, intentionally muddying those waters even further. So the question of our day, it seems to me, is how do we know what we know? How can we verify? I mean, think about climate change. You've got folks who deny it, and folks who are convinced of it. And I mean, where do you even begin to look? How do we? I don't have time to go through every paper on climate change and verify that they did the research properly, that the facts were straight, that they were doing it in a way in a setting that didn't create biases for them, either reputational or financial or professional. And I just don't have time to do that. So I don't know how to come to the truth right now. And it seems like it is, I mean, I'm reading completely conflicting pieces of information that seem to be from reputable sources about whether or not wearing a mask does any good in this time, right? And how do I parse that out as a non-expert when the experts seem to disagree? And that's just level one. Level two is when people interpreting the experts, but still at a certain level of trust in our society, be they individuals or organizations like some news media, and they spin that finding in a way that's going to capture my attention because they know me, perhaps even better than I know myself in terms of what captures my attention. And so that just creates further distortion, right? So at some point, we've got to figure out how to get back to truth telling, being very mindful of censorship, because we don't want to stray into that in such a way that, like, we're no longer, like, it is illegal to throw trash out your window, right? And it is illegal, it should be anyway, if it's not, to pollute the environment with industry. And yet it is not illegal at this point to pollute the informational common space of our society. And it seems like it needs to be, so that we can start making sense and stop being polarized by clicks and sticky websites that capture our attention. So this is just this is a puzzle. And if there are people who are thinking clearly about it, I want to know, because I want to know how to do good epistemology, and I want to know how to shift our culture back to good epistemology, so that how we know what we know is as pristine and reliable and as close to a reflection of reality as we can get it. So that's what my thinking is about currently, and I don't have a solution for you, and I just have a question. How do we do that? And to alert you that it is a category of thing that we need to think about. And I think at the root of a lot of our problems, right? Because if we don't have a reliable source of information from which to make decent sense, we don't have anything. We can't function as a society and make good decisions. We'll make good decisions. It's may as well throw dice. So anyway, that's where I'm at in the middle of this week. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on Sunday. Sunday, we're going to talk about coming to grips with death. And hopefully it's not going to be somber. It's not going to be morose or sad. Coming to grips with death actually invigorates, right? So we're going to be invigorated by thinking about death on Sunday. Look forward to interacting with you then. And until then, have a delightful week. And make sure that you know what you know and how you know it, and that everyone around you does the same. Bye-bye.